Okay, I know after the elevator adjustment on this plane and modification to the control linkage for the elevator, I stated that was probably going to be my last modification on this plane. Well, that turned out not to be so, because I just couldn't let that slow roll rate stand. You know, I had to do something about it. So the material that I use for this is this. It's almost translucent, but it is a plastic cutting mat. What's left of it. I've used it for several projects, but it's a plastic cutting mat. They usually come in different colors. They usually come in a pack of 4. It's only a 0.5 millimeter thick, but you know, because it's a cutting mat, it is very, very tough, a very durable material. It's also fairly flexible, but for the width of the amount of material that I was going to use, it was going to be rigid enough for that. So, and then I used some just cheap painter's tape. So I measured the width of the ailerons, and they were 78 millimeters wide, and then I measured the depth of the ailerons, and they're approximately 10 millimeters deep. So I marked out an area on this material 78 millimeters wide, 14 millimeters deep, because I wanted to extend the ailerons. I was shooting for 5 millimeters. I ended up with 6 millimeters worth of extension on the ailerons. So, but it gave me enough material to be able to, you know, attach it underneath the existing aileron control surface. Use some painter's tape. I cut the painter's tape 78 millimeters in length, and then I basically just bisected it. I cut it right down the middle. I used half of that to attach it to the aileron on the bottom, and then the other half for attaching it on the top, and that made it plenty secure. Now this is just a temporary extension. I didn't want to do anything permanent until I had a chance to take it out and perform some test flights to see if this is going to do what I need it to do. So this material you can find in grocery stores, you know, in the kitchen utility aisle. You can usually find it in other retail stores like Target, Walmart, Kmart, other department stores in the house goods department. You may even be able to find this in a hardware store, because they have a housewares, you know, kitchenware aisles where you may find this material there too. But it's very inexpensive material. It's good to have around for several different RC projects. So now that you know how I've attached these and how far I have extended them, the material that I've used to fabricate these, let's take it out to the field and perform a test flight and see if this in fact improves our roll rate on this plane. The only question is, I think it would definitely help the roll rate with the additional surface area on the ailerons. The only thing I don't know is if this little micro servo is going to have enough torque to move the additional control surface on the ailerons. But we will find out. I will see you out at the field.
Launching. Now, let's see here. I think it is a bit faster than it was before. Still not as fast as I would like. Wow, that is strange. It's got a really fast roll rate to the right, going against the torque of the motor. Bring it down a little bit. Look how fast the roll rate is to the right. That is strange. Bring it back over this way where we can see it. Let's speed up. Yeah, the roll rate to the left is still pretty lethargic, but the roll rate to the right, look at that. That's awesome to the right, but why is it so much faster going counter torque? Look at that. That's spectacular, but it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense, does it? Hmm. So, extending the aileron control surfaces was somewhat successful. We do get a faster roll rate even to the left, but it's almost as if, I don't know, maybe that servo is not centered quite right. You know, it's got more deflection to the right than it does to the left. Quite a bit. It must have quite a bit more deflection to the right than it does to the left if it's turning so much faster going against the torque of the motor. So I'll have to take a look at where that, look at that. I'll have to take a look at where that servo control arm is in relation to the center of the servo to see if we can get it turning as quickly to the left as to the right. But it looks like extending that control surface, look at that, at least going to the right, it made a huge difference. So if I can get that equalized, you know, from right to left, then I think it's going to have a pretty decent roll rate in both directions. I'm just going to have to see if I can get the rigging changed a little bit to get symmetrical movement on both of those. And then we'll test it again, but I think that, look at that. I think that is going to work out well if I can get that done. That's curious. I think what I'll do is, I think I'm going to apply some trim to the ailerons before I put the next battery pack in it, just to see if I can get that equalized a little bit with mechanical trim. Watch to the left again. Okay, so that's pretty slow. And then watch to the right. That is really fast. Okay. So let's bring it in and we'll see if we can change that mechanically. I think my depth perception's off again this morning. Alright, so I'll make some mechanical changes to the trim on these ailerons. We'll put another battery pack in it and see what we have. Okay, mechanical trim has been made. The wind has died down. So let's get it in the air and see what we have now. Oh, that was a little too much throttle on launch. Okay, left looks good. Now, let's see what the right looks like. Hey, I think we might be fairly symmetrical on our roll rates now. How about that? Yeah, I think that looks pretty symmetrical. Sweet. Now I have a decent roll rate both directions on this F4U Corsair now. I am completely happy with it. Sweet. Can't complain about that. So I think I am going to implement this as a permanent solution for this plane and do the same thing for the Volantex Sport Cub 500 since it has fairly lethargic rolls, and get that one with a nice roll rate too. I think that'll work out just fine. Now I'm completely happy with this plane. I also increased the expo on my ailerons to 50% after doing the full manual flights earlier with this plane. I felt like the ailerons were just a little too abrupt at 40% expo. So I kicked it down to I kicked it up to 50% expo, and I think that handles very nicely now as far as the smoothness of the ailerons. Oh, that is so cool now. I am now extremely happy with this plane. Now I just can't quit rolling it. Sweet. Isn't that awesome? Now, one thing I did notice after extending these ailerons is they do provide a little bit of, how shall I put it? A little bit of nose lift, kind of like a flap, you know, because they're extended past the end of the ailerons by 6 millimeters. So they're also lower than the main wing, which creates a little bit of a, you know, a flap. So I think it helped the slow flight capability of the plane having that additional wing area there. But the other thing that it did was it wanted to lift the nose. So what I did was I pulled off my counterweight on the tail that I had on it because the nose was a little heavy. And so after extending that, I did not have to put the tail weight on it anymore. Isn't that awesome, though? I am extremely happy with that now. Okay, let's see if we can bring it in for a landing. Too fast. Let's go around and come in again. Alright, slow it down a little bit. I just cannot keep this thing from flipping over on this rough surface, but I am very happy with the end result of that temporary modification. I'm going to make it a permanent modification, and then I'll take a look at the Volantex Sport Cub 500 in the same way. So, see you back at the HQ.
Okay, with some additional trim on the mechanical trim on the ailerons, it actually turned out better than I thought it would. I'm extremely happy with that. I'm going to make this a permanent extension to the ailerons. One thing that I didn't think about that I probably should is extending the control surface on the ailerons. Where you're going further back from the trailing edge of the wing, it actually creates kind of a flap effect, you know, when you extend flaps most of the time, but not always when you extend flaps at once to push the nose up on the aircraft. So during the first flight, you could see that I was having a hard time, you know, losing altitude with the plane, and the reason for that was because these were acting like flaps and they were pushing the nose up a bit. So I did put in some elevator trim, but I found, you know, since I was putting counterweight on the tail to bring the nose up to begin with, because with the landing gear is a little bit nose heavy, I was actually able to completely remove the counterweight that I had on the tail, trim the elevator down just a little bit to get it to fly nice and level with these extended ailerons. And then once I got the mechanical adjustment made on the ailerons, I have I would say near symmetrical roll rate to the left and to the right. So I'm now completely happy with the way that this Corsair is flying, with the additional pitch that I have for the rolls and the split S maneuvers, with the adjustment with the linkage on the elevator, and now I'm extremely happy with the roll rate on this plane. So now I can say, once I make these permanent, I think that's the end of the mods for this plane, as far as I'm concerned. So what am I going to do to make these permanent? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the tape. I'm going to remove the material that I used for the extension, and it's, like I said, it's only 0.5 millimeter thick. So I want to try and make it just about as thick as the trailing edge of the foam on the aileron, so it's nice and flush. So, and that looks like it's probably about 2.5, 3 millimeters thick. So what I'm going to do is pull these off. I'm going to take some styrofoam plate material. I'm going to cut the centers out of it, cut two sections, 6 millimeters by 78 millimeters, and I'm going to glue this this cutting board material to the bottom of the aileron, and then I'm going to take that styrofoam plate foam, which I think would be just about the right thickness, and I'm going to glue it to the trailing edge of the aileron on top of this material and make it permanent, and then it will also look a lot better. And you know, with the additional material there to bring that up flush, my guess is that's going to help the roll rate just a little bit better than what it is currently, because right now there's kind of a step off there. So I think having that foam flush with the top of the aileron is actually going to provide more rotational torque. So I think after I do that, the roll rate will even be slightly better than it is now. The other added benefit is with the additional surface area here on the wing, it does slightly improve the slow flight capability of this plane at the same time. So I think it's a win-win situation, and I always like those. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.